client. Okay. Client and project management process. We're going to talk about the standards to follow and best practice. We're going to talk about design aesthetics. We're going to talk about space planning samples. And we're going to jump something that Nicole and I thought was extremely important. So interior versus architecture, where to draw the line. We thought this was really important because sometimes we tend to go beyond the scope, which is something that the interior design will do, or sometimes we may go under the scope, which is something that architects and in architecture we should have. So then we're going to talk about team experiences, questions, and kind of open it up to you guys. Then, other than that, we're going to jump right into it. We think it will be best to maybe try to keep some of the questions towards the end so we can get through the material, if that is okay with you, unless there's something that we're saying that you do not understand and we can repeat it and things like that. Any questions on that? Okay. So then, let's see. Right into the importance of the kitchen. So the kitchen is important because it's pretty much the heart of the house. It's the main gathering. That's where all families basically spend the days. That's where they share meals. Basically, it's where memories are made. So if we think about the kitchen, we think about holidays, cooking together, learning a recipe. So it's kind of like where everything comes together in the house. And it's basically one of the most active spaces in the kitchen. I mean, in the house, I'm sorry. So when it comes to health and day living, the kitchen is where food is prepared, which supports a healthier eating. A well-designed and organized kitchen makes daily routines easier, and also a clean and functional space can reduce stress and improve productivity. Also, think about the financial value. The kitchen is one of the most important rooms for resale. Every time we think about renovations, most clients want the kitchen to be the wow moment, also the living room, but they tie together. So, and most of the times, buyer design of the kitchen, basically, that's one of the things that help them decide. And then Nicole.
And then the importance of the bathroom, like imagine your house without a bathroom. It would be a nightmare to live in a house without a bathroom. But aside from that, it's obvious function. It's a personal experience. It's a private space. And then it's also have like a technical component because we have to think about, ventilation, plumbing, all of those MEPs items that make the project a little bit complex. And then we need to think about these spaces as well-being spaces where, if a bathroom is well designed, then it will make your life easier. But if it's bad design, it will make your life a lot harder. And if you're married, you can testify that because if you're with your husband in the bathroom and it's bad design, then it will create like a nightmare. So yeah, that's basically it. um, the client and project management process. Next slide. So here at Flow, we have a four-step process. So the second step is what we all know, which is the vision part of it. So when we receive these images for, especially for kitchens and bathrooms, we always get like these wow images, right? And sometimes like these images doesn't align with what the client has in the space or doesn't align with their budget. So we as designers have to kind of like work around that ambition to give them a solution that kind of like combines all of the elements and would give them a result that they're looking for, but something that can actually fit into their space, life, and budget. Mhm.
So we're going to jump in first into the standards to follow and best practice. I'm going to start first with the kitchen. So there's a lot of standards and things to follow. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a heavy information when it comes to standards, dimensions, and things like that. So one of the things you guys can refer to is the IRC, so which is the International Residential Code. You can go back to know more in depth about certain codes that we need to follow. One of the ones that we need to keep in mind is material safety. So we need to think about non-combustible, non-slip flooring, and no sharp corners. That is more related to safety in the kitchen. Then proper ventilation. So this is something important because we need to think about mechanical ventilation. Do we have a hood? Do we have a fan? One of the best practice that I've tried to do in my designs is to bend to the outside. So don't think about just a basically a microwave that's just bending. So a proper bend like a hood range that's gonna completely bend to the outside, and that ties to having windows in the kitchen. So airflow. Also, the kitchen must not block the egress path. So also 30 inches clearance from the cooktop to any other surface above the cook range. So I have other dimensions here that you can use for reference and go back to this. I'm not going to go through it. But something to keep in mind when it comes to cabinets, we try to design with what we call a standard dimension. A standard means something that the cabinet maker can make is something that is already easy to fabricate. So the typical dimensions there they go within 3 inches increments. So for example, a typical cabinet standard height will be 24 inches, 36 inches, 42 inches. If you see something outside of that, that means it's custom, which means it's going to be pretty pricey for the client. So something very important to keep in mind, the space from the counter basically to the bottom of the cabinet. So that's the space that you will have to put all of your mechanical equipment on the counter. So that's usually 18 inches. But we recommend 24 because sometimes you may have people that bump their head into the cabinets, or you may not have enough space to have your juicer, your whatever equipment you put on the counter. So don't always think of minimum as the only thing we have to do. Think about that's what the code told us, but what can we do? Can we make it better? So that's just something to keep in mind. And then I do have a note here to for you to remember that, or for all of us to remember that anytime we're outside of these measures, there's more, but that means it's custom. So that's something we have to mention to the client because that means they're going to have to pay a little bit more for these cabinets, whether it's upper cabinets, the smaller cabinets that go above the main cabinets, the base cabinets, anything along those lines. And one thing that Nicole and I want everybody to basically keep in mind is that try to do a standard. So it's okay if you can not make it a standard. That's when the custom piece come in, but try to resource to it if it's basically necessary. Like if you have a nook or a little corner that you really have to make something custom, that's fine. That's when you will go outside of this dimension. So other than that, I have some examples here because I think it's important to show graphics. So some of these diagrams here are showing some of the minimum and some of the things that are recommended. So the top diagram is basically dishwasher spacing. So 36 inches maximum from the sink to the dishwasher, and 21 minimum from the dishwasher to whatever next thing you have. That's diagram one. The second diagram shows a little bit of recommendation when it comes to work areas. So 36 inches is pretty typical, but that's still pretty tight. So that's when you have to talk to the client and see what type of family they have, how many things are they going to be doing, because the moment you have more than one person cooking and you have a very active family that they're going to be around the kitchen, you can see that your clearances start to grow. So we're going to need 36, we're going to need 42. So think about those things. Also, as you can see here on the third diagram, I like this example because you show how many things can be happening that will make you want to increase that clearance. So for example, on the third diagram, it says 32 inches. That's minimum, but that's super tight. That's just assuming that you don't have anybody passing through, but it tells you 36 inches for traffic passing. But I love the fact that it said 44 inches to move freely. Think about that. The moment you're coming with groceries, you coming in with coat, it's winter, you have a lot of things going on. So that's for you to pass comfortably without bumping into the stools and things like that. So what we offer to the client is comfort. So we typically don't want to do just the minimum by code unless we absolutely have to, like an ADU that you are pretty limited. So now, if you think about ADA, which we're not going to get too in depth, like accessibility, you will have to grow even more. So as you can see, the 60 inches at the bottom, that's assuming you have to go through with a wheelchair. So those are things you have to keep in mind. You have to discuss that with the client. Is somebody with a wheelchair going to be living in this house? So you know that then your space from that counter to the wall, from the island to the wall, and so on needs to be even bigger. And then I have this section here, which I think was going to be pretty helpful for you to see. So section number 1 is showing minimum heights. So if you take a look at that, it tells you exactly the height of everything. So 30 inches, pretty typical for the height of about 30 inches for the height of the base cabinets. Then it tells you 18 inches minimum from the top of that counter to the bottom of the cabinet. But as you can see, the little guy here in the diagram, it's almost like he's about to hit the cabinet. Not really, but unless he goes to do something, it's not really that comfortable. So that diagram shows a perfect depiction of diagram B. We gave 24 inches clearance. So as you can see in the diagram, if he has like a tall equipment there or something, it looks like he's more comfortable to do things or anybody in that space. So that's something to keep in mind. Minimum versus what it's recommended, what makes things easier. So there are other dimensions here that you can use as a base for the toe kick. That's the little bottom of the cabinets where people can comfortably have their feet slide in without hitting the cabinets. So some of those things you all know, but these are just general reference and things to keep in mind. So I'm gonna just keep going with that. Then here is some precedent analysis of some of our favorite spaces that we thought would be really important for you to see. So one of the reasons I wanted to show this is because you can see most of the spaces on the top are very rich in architecture. So I think when we're designing, it's important to know that all of the things that we make, all of the decisions we make are going to affect the interior. So one second, are going to affect the interior. So as you can see on the first photo, you can see the big windows, the lighting, the air flowing, everything. So these are things that we need to think about to make it easy for whoever is going to do the interior. And if we are not doing the interior, we still have to kind of like take advantage of make the kitchen really, really elaborated because as you can see, there's so much that can happen in the kitchen and also the bathrooms. So I wanted to show this third photo because as you can see, there's no space to waste. So you can see that with that little corner there, that's not even 24 inches. That's about 18 inches nook. You can do a coffee station. You can do a bar. Those are things that we have to think about. Yes, if we're not doing interior design, maybe we're not going to really pick the pretty wallpaper, the colors, and that kind of details. But in architecture, we have to find those places and make those decisions. So then there are other examples here at the bottom too. It's a vaulted ceiling. Like, what are we really doing with this space to really make it wow, practical, safety, aesthetically pleasing? So that's just that. Then here I want to talk about type of kitchen. So when the client mentions some of these things, if they know, it's important that we understand what are these type of kitchens. So number one, we have one wall. So that's just one counter, one straight line. So I added this little red diagram to kind of like show the movement and the circulation between main things such as the fridge, the sink, and the stove. So galley, that's the one where you have the one wall counter and then you have an island right across. Then the L shape, you guys are pretty familiar with that. Then we have the U shape. We have the peninsula that has a little hangover here to kind of add some seating. And then we have the island, which is pretty typical. Then, so I have some notes here to kind of like from our understanding when we think is a good time to use these types. So remember, this depends on the design, on the client budget, and what applies to the rest of the house. So it doesn't mean we have to do these shapes. Those are the common ones. So for example, we believe when we do one wall, I think this is usually used to number one when there's a lack of a space. For example, I can see this being used on an ADU project because you have limited space, so you will do everything in one wall. We wouldn't do this mainly if we have a space because that means you're having fridge in one wall, the sink and the stove. So you kind of don't, you're not allowing too much to do. So then the galley one, I think, excuse me. I think this is a good idea when there's like heavy traffic because you're kind of like making the traffic flow. Instead of just one wall, you're sending people to the other island and then you're having basically seating. So that's what I have that red line because you can sit basically far from the stove, but they could be sitting there. Hmm. Excuse me. I think the L shape is usually used when you need more counter because you can have a little bit of prepping area and things like that. Just excuse me one moment. I think the peninsula one too when you need more counter and also when you need seating. And then the island one, which is one of the most used one, I think I would use this basically when you have again limited space. Out of all of this, think about what is it that the client wants and what makes sense for the project. For example, the U shape, if you don't have a lot of space to have enough clearance from counter on the side to the other counter, you're creating a very tight kitchen there. Everybody just navigating around the same U. If you have, for example, an open concept, I think the galley is a great idea because you can have people basically um, be prepping here and then you have the visual connection. So think about all of these things. At the same time, doesn't mean that these are great example about the stove location. The stove in island, that's not a great location. We're referring just about the type. So I think I'm gonna just wrap it up there with that. Excuse. Sorry, guys. This one. These are just some samples directly from Flow that I wanted to show. So I decided to show the floor plan because it's important to know what was the first decision where we place the kitchen. So this is a project that I'm currently working on. It's a lake house. So it's very small house, but one of the things the client mentioned, he wanted to have an outdoor living. So which mean and he wanted to have a visual connection, which mean that already told me that the kitchen is probably gonna go towards the back so I can have it connected open concept with the living room and then open up to the deck and then have the lake view. So that was the first decision of where the kitchen was going to go. Now, one of the things the client mentioned, he wanted the sink basically to have a window, which means that already told me it needed to be an exterior wall. Then I provided seating with an island. Then you could be here prepping in the island and then have that visual connection to the living room. And then I place a stove in that area, which is not an exterior wall. This is a particular case because it was important to have prep area on the left and on the right. However, we can bend this correctly because they can bend it through a pipe, through the wall, and bend it outside. So it's possible. I was limited because he said he wanted the sink with a window. So basically, that was my starting point. So either way, I just wanted to show you that there I have the proper clearance from the counter to the island, from the island to the stove, from the exterior wall to the island. So that was just a quick example there. So the other example I wanted to show you that sometimes we may have very, very unusual requests from the client and very particular design. Not typically what we do, but we still have to make it work. So in this new house that I worked on, as you can see, I kind of make the plan bigger at the bottom. The client, for some reason, wanted to use that front area that says pantry bar to be part of the kitchen. I would have probably done it longer instead of going that way, but she wanted that. She didn't tell me where to put anything, but I just have to make it work. So what I decided to do was make the island very long and very thin. So it's more for seating and a little bit of prepping. And then I place the sink right, like basically in front of the exterior wall, in front of the windows, and then the stove with a little bit of prepping area, and then the dishwasher. think about that wall is very, very short. So I didn't have a lot to do. So because she wanted to use this area, I decided to put the fridge, the pantry, the bar, and everything else on the other area. So those are things that we have to think about. If I know I don't have that much wall space, as you can see, where it says kitchen, that means most of the counter, then I decided to move it here, as you can see there, counter and cabinets. And then the other side, more like fridge and pantry. That's very unusual. It doesn't happen. I just wanted to show that sometimes when we have those kind of like interesting requests, we still have to think about how we can make it work. Ideally, we wouldn't put the fridge that far, but sometimes clients have some requests and then we have to kind of work with that the best way possible. So the reason why I put the pantry there is because it makes sense usually to have the fridge and the pantry next to each other. So this is supposed to be fridge, pantry moment, bar, so on and so on. And this is kind of like where the main cabinets will be. So there are more notes there that you can take a look and see what I believe we provided on this design, such as seating areas, prepping counter, safety, airflow, a visual connection to the outdoors. As you can see, both of these designs will flow to the outside as seamlessly as possible, so on and so on. So then this is another design that I wanted to show the interior because this was not an interior design project. This was just architecture. So I wanted to show the renderings because I'm going to talk about a little bit of detail about it. So first thing is the client wanted, this is a complete new house. The client wanted vaulted ceilings. So of course I wanted to show that on the 3D so he can kind of envision this kitchen moment. This is one of the biggest kitchen I have worked on. So it was supposed to be a moment. So this is in the back of the house, completely separated roof, so on and so on. So on this one, I added dimensions so you can use it for reference. So in this one, my starting point was the windows, right? I thought doing a 3D will help me because that tells me if I'm gonna have a bolted, nice ceiling, it will be awkward to place things. You have to see it to know how, where to place things. So I placed this triple pane window in the middle of the vaulted ceiling. And then that told me that everything will start from that point. So it's usually nice, a good habit to have the sink right below a window. So that was my starting point. Then, as you can see, guys, this is important to know. When you have heights, different heights, it's important to know how many cabinets are you going to have. In this case, I have a lot of height. So I did the highest cabinets. I did 36 inches. And then I did another set of cabinets right above that. And those are all standard dimensions. So that's just so it doesn't look awkward. My goal was to make it look proportional. So you don't have a really high space and then not enough proportion. So another thing was I added the stove in a complete different wall. That way, um, you have the prep space on the right. So I tried to be very symmetrical. So you have the stove and then you have prepping on the left and on the right, and then the fridge. Then the island is basically in the center. So you have a prepping island, which is on the right, and then the other one is more like sitting. So that already has the airflow. It has enough clearance. As you can see from the stove to the island is 4.7. I did that because it's a pretty big space. So I'm pretty sure they're going to be entertaining and having a lot of guests there. And then when you're cooking, you're carrying things on your hand to bring over. So this was going to be pretty busy for me, the right side, and then also the left side because you have people coming in from the deck. So these are things we have to think about. In front of the sink, I just see 3.6, which is pretty reasonable. You're not going to have that many people there. Either way, I just wanted to show the renderings because this was architecture, which means we were not hired to decide what color the counter is going to be, what type of fridge, what type of stove, none of those details. So I would show the rendering, super basic. What I do, just so you guys know, when we're not hired for interior design, which means picking the finishes, picking the furniture, I do something pretty as basic as I can. I just make it warm colors, white, and maybe some wood. That's it. So that is architecture project. If we were hired for interior, then I would have gone the extra mile with certain finishes and so on and so on. So other than that, let me see. Nicole.
Okay, so bathrooms. So as you may already know, some of them, like power room, which is the half bathroom that it's usually used by guests. There are some other types, like I'm not from the US, as you know. So when I came there, they use this term like Jack and Jill that I have never heard before. So I was kind of like confused when I heard that term before, because we don't have anything like that here in Colombia. So Jack and Jill is a type of bathroom where you basically have two entrances. So that they're usually used like by teenagers, or if you have kids, or um, high traffic areas. So it is good to know the different types of bathrooms and different types of layout. So when you're talking to a client, you kind of understand what they want and what will be the best fit for their project. The rest, like guest bathroom, that you already know, is usually like for the guest bedroom, or the visitors that come into the houses. Primary bath and master bath, which is like, um, in my experience, where most clients want to have like the best experiences. And then the accessory ones, which is the ones that they don't wanna like think too much about them, like ADUs, basement, bathrooms, or pool houses. Next. So as Ryan mentioned before, we do have minimums requirements per code. That doesn't mean that we have to design with the minimums that the code requires us to do. So next, please. So I'm gonna kind of like go um each one of the types, and then each one of the minimums that the code requires, and then what would be the best for functionality. I'm not gonna go into detail because it's gonna make the presentation super long, but you can always like refer to this presentation if you're designing like a bathroom, and see what would be the best, if you have the space, of course. So for the toilet, you like most of us already know that we need like 15 inches from the wall to the center of the toilet, and then we need 21 inches clear in the front. Door minimums, it's 32 inches, and then ceiling height is 7 feet. I wouldn't do a bathroom that is less than 25 square feet for a half bathroom. It will feel like very cramped. And then, for example, I wouldn't do like a single flush door, because if someone is standing here and you try to open the door, then you will hit that person. But I would do like a pocket door, some kind of stuff to think about. For the type of bathroom that you are designing, basically. Uh, Jack and Jill, so this is what I was mentioning before. So it's just basically a bathroom with two entrances. As I mentioned before, these type of bathrooms are used like for people who have kids, or teenagers, of someone who's planning to share a bathroom between two bedrooms. So because of that, oh, can you go back, right? So can you go back to the Jack and Jill bathroom? That one, yeah. So if you are like, if you know that this house is gonna be used by parents, I would do like a large tub, so the parents can wash their kids and stuff like that. So just think about the experiences and what the bathroom is gonna use for, and then make sure that you are planning for that. Um, Next, please. Um, Okay, so guest bathroom, same clearances. Shower is 30 by 30 minimum. There is not like a code for shower height, but the shower, like the best one is 6'8". If you have like a taller client, then just talk to your client and see what will be the best. If they want to do like instead of a wall shower head, they can do like waterfall attached to the ceiling. It will depend on what you're designing, but some of the things to consider. There is no code requirement on accessories, but you need to think that they will need like a toilet paper holder, shower, bars, and all of that fixtures that make your life easier daily. Next, please. So master bathroom. So this one, depending on the space that you have, I will always like to think that this will be used by couples. So I will plan to be used by two people at the same time. Uh, so just keep in mind that when you are designing, like double vanities if you have the space, or if you are doing one single vanity, then just plan for storage space. Uh, next, please. Then I wanted to use two samples. So this one is like a high-end house that Julio did. So you may have seen these photos before. They're really great. But I wanted to use this sample because I wanted you guys to see how like sometimes bathrooms are like a experience in some of the high-end houses, and then you have like a ton of space to design. So you have to do that like very mindful and trying to take advantage of that to create the experience that the client is looking for. Um, next, please. And then I wanted to use this one because this is just a guest bathroom. We had like a really tight space for this one. And then the client, even though it was like a really tight space, and we were using the minimums, the client wanted to create like an experience because it was like guest bath. It was like for guests, so they wanted the guests on their house to have like an experience if they're gonna be staying at their home. Um, yeah, next.
And this one, Nicole, it was interior design, so you pick the finishes too.
Oh, yeah. So on this one, we went to the next phase, which is interior design. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so on this part, we're gonna talk about like when we receive the envision part, and mostly for kitchens and bathrooms, most of our clients, I would say, like they say they want something modern, but sometimes they don't know what they want. Like they will use a word, but then when you're talking to them and then how the pictures are laid out and how they envision the space kind of like often can confuse us because they don't relate to what they're naming. They're designed to be. So I just wanted to create like a basically like a cheat sheet for us to go back and understand better when we see some of these things. So for example, if we see some lightwood white walls in simple forms, people can confuse that with modern, but it's that's another type of style. So you can always like go back to this and see what styles align best with what the client wants. And I feel like that will make us look more professional, knowing what the client is referring to. So we can talk to them a little bit more on that end. I don't know if Ray, you want to add something to this one.
No, I just want to jump in and say that sometimes a client will know about the styles, and then you can use the cheat sheet if you like, just to know what are the things that are in the pool of that style. If they don't know, then our job is to kind of define that style according to the budget or where the house is located, and so on and so on. So most of us are familiar with this. If we're not, come back to this and then just know everything that kind of comes with that style. Know if you want to mix it with another style, so on and so on. So this one is just basically getting a little bit onto interior design. I know the interior department is growing as Darwin wanted to be, and then I know we're gonna have more new people that are into the interior design department. So this is to show you that coming back from that project that I showed you before that we just did. I'm gonna go back quickly, just so that you can see the difference. So this was architecture, the flow, the airflow, the lighting, the ceiling. So everything is together, but the kitchen works. And it doesn't matter if the cabinet makers or someone wants to change it. At the end of the day, our goal is to provide something that works as best as possible. And then, but as you can see, I was not defining finishes. So if we are doing interior design, then these are the things that we will be picking for the client. So these are called material palette board, where we will see, we're picking the specific faucet, the actual stool, the flooring, the tile. So I wanted to show you that so you can kind of see the difference from one and the other. Like how much are we supposed to be doing, whether it's architecture or interior. So then this is not called a vision board or an ambition because this is not really an ambition at this point. At this point will be something that the interior designer specifically shows for the project, and we put it this way to present it to the client. At that point, we're just showing it nice and aesthetically pleasing so the client can see the picture all together. But we have already selected everything based on the budget. We have already researched if it's waterproof, if it's high impact resistance, all of those things that are in the background. Just an FYI. So I wanted to include this quickly because we're not really focusing too heavy on interior design, but I just wanted to have some reference so whoever is new in the interior design department that can kind of like refer to this. So I included this project, which was the Play Cafe I worked on recently. That project had a kitchenette and also a bar. So I'm not including it for the standards because, as you may know, residential kitchens and bathrooms are different from commercial kitchen and bathrooms. So I wanted to show this only for the interior design purpose because we were hired to do architecture and interior design. So for the interior design phase, I selected the finishes after we were done with the design. So in this phase, I wanted to show you what the material board looks like of the things I selected. So for example, and also so that you can see how Flow does things, right? So these are general examples, not from Flow, just general ideas, but this is how Flow typically expect people to do it when it comes to interior design. So the first images is showing one space. So we do numbers because we show like a region of that space just so the client can see where everything is going to go. So that's that. And then at that point, we don't do renderings because Nicole and I discussed before that. We're just showing the client the actual finishes. So this was based on budget, on the concept of the space, and the functionality of the space, right? So this is a Play Cafe. She gave us a color palette, as you can see over there. Normally, we will pick the color palette, but she came with her color palette. So then we have to do everything based on that color palette. However, at that point, Nicole and I discussed before that it doesn't make sense to really do rendering because that's too much work. By the time you get to the rendering, we have to show the materials as close as possible. So that will take too much time to either research families or custom build some of them. So the first step when it comes to interior design, I'm not going to talk about it too much. It's just do this material palette board. All the research and everything I did, it's in the background. This is just to show the client. But at that point, we should know that he works with the budget, he works with the concept, it's safe, it's practical, and all those things. So first one was the bar. The one at the bottom was for the entry lounge. The one on the right was for like a nursery. So the renderings are there. Those came in later on after the client was pretty already settled on the finishes. Then we put together a rendering. The rendering is just to show a general idea of what the space will be. It will be impossible to try to model all of the furniture and everything exactly as the vendor. So the rendering is just to show a pretty general idea. Of course, if we do something custom like this wall I did with the arches, that we have to model. Just a general reference. So I put a list here that I hope we can help anybody coming back to this that sets all of the things that we are hoping that anybody can do when it comes to the expectations of the interior project. So discuss the project, the budget. That's super, super important. Doesn't matter how beautiful something is. If it doesn't work with the budget that the client gave us, then we shouldn't include it. The color palette, in this case, create one. In this case, she gave us one. Create the mood boards, then research specific materials and furniture according to the budget and the concept. So ensure rendering showcase similar finishes and then get to the rendering later on. So many more things here. Not gonna get into it. I know not everybody here is interior. So the last thing I will say, ensure overall balance between everything. And that's that. Nicole.
Yeah, so following the interior design part of this presentation, so as I mentioned before, like there are different styles that we're working with. Let's say modern, coastal. I don't know what your client wants. So this is also like a cheat sheet for us when it comes to bathrooms. So let's say your client said he wants like a modern look, then you can refer to the sheet and see what type of materials work for that type of style. So if you're doing a modern look, then maybe you want to use like brass um, or gold finishes or even like black finishes. But if your client wants to have like a traditional style, then you can use like bronze. Um, and then if you are looking into, tiles and or like wall finishes, if you're looking for modern, then you can use like porcelain slabs, and it's just like a cheat sheet of things that kind of aligns to each one of the styles. And then as you can see like in the top two pictures, like it does makes a difference, like the materials. It could be the exact same space, but if it's two different styles, it will create like a very different experience. So yeah. Next, please. So yeah, so as Brian mentioned before, like when we got hired, we mostly do architecture. So sometimes when client comes to us, we don't know where to draw the line because they start asking us questions of materials on how far should we take the drawings. So next. So, for example, if I was doing just architecture, I would keep in my mind that I will just do like the basal. And then if I will do in the interiors, then I will keep in my mind that I will provide an experience to my client. Um, so again, I will look into each one of the elements. So for example, if I'm doing bathrooms, then I will look into the structure, the safety, that I'm co-compliant with all the things that we need to comply with, that has proper ventilation and so on. But if I'm doing interiors, I will, if I'm not the one doing the architecture part aspect of things, I was just thinking of experience and functionality. So if I'm gonna pick up floor for a bathroom, I will just make sure that it's a slip resistance, that is the type of material that will work for that. Of course, as you can see, like on this diagram, there are like some things that kind of like overlap when you are working on the two things. So for example, if you're working on architecture and interior design, both of those things will have to do floor plans, elevations, to showcase the details that they're working in. So just something to have in mind. Ray, do you want to add something to that?
No, I just wanted to say I like the part that overlaps because, for example, when we're doing architecture, I know we're not supposed to be focusing on the finishes, but we still have to do the interior elevations. And in some cases, like I've discussed with Marcus before, sometimes a project might have additional budget, so he will want us to do some interior drawings. Again, we're not focusing on the finish, but we still have to show the interior of that drawing. So that's when we have to draw the line that yes, we're showing the interior design of the space architecturally, but we don't have to go crazy about picking finishes and doing all of that and even showing it in the rendering. We can pick something nice, but we have to mention to the client that this is for illustration purpose. So that's something that I will definitely add on the rendering and notate it so that they know that it's just the architectural part. But we're still showing the design on elevations when it comes to architecture. So I think it's important for us to know that it doesn't matter if we think they're not going to build it that way. I've heard that comment before. It's okay. I think we still have to do the best that we can with the kitchen and the bathroom. Even if they're going to change it, even it doesn't matter. We still have to show something that worked to the best of our ability because let's say, what about if they decide to build it just like that? And it's problematic or it's not practical or it's not safe. So that's just something to keep in mind.
I was gonna say so quickly to great job by the way. That it's not that when we're doing architecture, we don't think about the finish. That's incorrect. We have to think about the finish as it relates to how it all gets put together. So what's the thickness of this material? Is it going to create a threshold problem when you're moving from one space to the other? We may not know exactly what the color of that material is or what the texture of that material is, but the thicknesses of them, um, fixtures, how do they get attached? Do the architect is the one that specifies the blocking for those fixtures to be able to be connected to the wall. If we don't specify them, then the interiors will not work. So we always we have to be a little bit more ahead of the game, but probably the look and feel it's not really finished, like not really selected, but at least, hey, we know slats are gonna come in here. How do they get attached? We don't know the finish, we don't know the color, we don't know the detailing, but we do know that slats are gonna come in here. We have to make sure that they work. So it's it's really a hybrid of the two, and we want to make sure that at Flow we can marry the two as quickly and easily as possible, and we can then invite clients into this new side of this of the work. Like, okay, hey, listen, I think it would be a great idea for us if we did the interior design, which would involve X, Y, and Z. So distinguishing the difference between one or the other is gonna really help us, beef up the budget, beef up the fee on the financial side. But at the end of the day, it has to work even if we didn't design the interiors. It has to provide the blocking, all of those elements that go in, the switches, the interiors typically gets into even like LED designs and lighting designs and ceiling designs, like very detailed ceilings. But if we don't provide the underlayment for that to go and for the lighting to go, the electricians don't really look too much about the interior design package. They look at the architectural package. And there was a lot of lessons learned on the Play Cafe because they didn't even look at the interior design package. And that was really a great lesson for us to make sure that sometimes we have to be redundant to some degree because the outlets go here, but they also go there. Because if they don't show it there, they don't know where the equipment goes, and it's going to create a problem, and they can ignore it. So coordination is really important, and that's why we have to look at it as if we're doing everything, but we're just not going to specify everything.
Thank you for that, Darren. Yes, I also see it as in architecture creating a really good base, even if we might not specify everything if we're not doing interior, but at least imagining generally what may happen next. Also, I have a good example of something I glanced over of Julio project and Wandy. They were working on some projects that they were trying to take advantage of a space, of every space when they were doing the space planning on the floor plan. And they were telling me like, oh, this will be good for like a bar or a little cafe station. And I was like, that's great because they were not wasting any space. And then they didn't even get into the aesthetics of what it will look like. They were just saying, I have it 18 inches, it's about 5, so I can do X and Y. So that's something that we can start thinking about it. So by the time it gets to the next person, it's already a really good base and we show that we took advantage of everything space wise.
And then this is just a project that we did. It was like a bathroom and a kitchen. So we did the architectures and we also did interiors. So this is what like an interior package will look like. We will add the finishes and like a shopping list with all the prices, reference, and links. So it's easy for the client to have access to that. But also on the architectural part, as Darwin mentioned, we're accounting for all of those items, as you can see in the interior elevations and also like code requirements and all of those elements mentioned before.
Now we can go back to anything that you like. We still have time, but now we have a team challenge. So we want you guys, if you were falling asleep, we want you guys to wake up and identify what is wrong with these spaces. So some things might be obvious, but some things, if you were paying attention to some of the things we were saying, you should be able to identify some of these things. So let's go. So first, let's see. Now I have two cases. One, I made it purposely very tricky for you to see what may be wrong. So I want to see. Anybody identify what's wrong with these kitchens? I have two. And we're not really talking about aesthetics, remember. not aesthetics. Everything. Anybody?
Maybe the ventilation of the stove? Is that one or no?
No, it's high enough there. Oh, you're saying that doesn't have a vent?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't look like a vent. I don't think so. Okay, sure. Anything else?
The
The
one in the
brown
right.
one is not high enough on top of the sink. Probably it's less than 10,
Yes.
18, whatever.
It seems very problematic. Yes, it's low. Anything else?
The one
There's
on
a
the
lot of
right.
things. Yes,
The
you're
one on
kind
the
of
right doesn't have enough prepping space on both sides of the stove,
it's limited. Hmm.
and the island is redundant there because there's only 3 feet. If you count the tiles, which is 1 feet per tile, it's only
Hmm.
3 feet in between the island and the counter, so there is not enough space. And I don't know what the laundry room is doing there, but that's another story.
Yes, great job. Anything else? There's no right or wrong, guys. So anything that kind of calls your attention, there's major issues with.
So the sink on the right doesn't have a door underneath the sink, right? Is that open? Is that what I'm seeing?
I think it's because an old photo is broken, but there is a dishwasher there on
Okay.
the next to the fridge. Yes.
On the first kitchen, the sink is right on the corner of the shape. So it doesn't have enough space.
Got it. Like the left side on the white kitchen. I get it. You're right. Okay, that's one. Anything else?
That space is kind of dead too with the window there. So that's a
Right.
really bad corner right there. So I don't even know how that's resolved, but it looks like a
Right.
wasted corner.
And by the way, these are not flow projects. Definitely not. But anything else? Juliana, come on, guys. They're major things here.
The countertops looks like a little high. It looks high to me. I don't know,
On-
I don't know if it's the photo or something, but it looks high.
On the right one?
Yes, on the right one.
Also,
Okay.
the position of the fridge on the second photo, how you open the doors.
It's pretty close to the wall. That's right.
No,
Julio.
Oh no, go
ahead,
go ahead, Wendy.
no, I was gonna say in the left one, I see that the oven is too close to the countertop there. There's like a corner and there's like a wall cabinet on that corner that I don't think will open. So
Yes, 100%.
The flooring also doesn't go along with the actual lines of the design. So that's a design aesthetic part, I guess, because that flooring at a diagonal versus all these orthogonal lines doesn't seem to work well. Those soffits seems to be a waste of space. Like they could have leveraged those soffits at the top somehow.
Perfect. I wanted somebody to point that. Yes.
Yeah, those cabinets are, if you made them all the way up, they would be almost impossible to reach too. So I respect that they're soffits because they get dirty and it's impossible to clean. In fact, in hospitals, you cannot have soffits, spaces above the cabinets. So this will be fine for a hospital because of the bacteria and dust and things like that. But for, again, a kitchen, residential kitchen, that could have been leveraged somehow as maybe, transparent glazing and some storage of like interesting things with LEDs or something, but it's wasted. So they could have used taller cabinets. These are like 30-inch cabinets. This could have been 36-inch tall cabinets.
Definitely. Julio, you wanted to say something?
No, Wendy said what I wanted to say about that corner. So
Okay, on the white kitchen?
yeah. It was that part.
Okay.
On the right-hand side too, I see that they did not likely do a plug behind the fridge because I see that the fridge is being plugged to the countertop of plug. So we always detail and specify a plug behind the fridge, which sometimes is inserted into the wall. They don't come out. So that when you put the fridge, you don't need to have a lot of space in there. It's almost like the plug that we use for the wall-mounted TVs that are coming inside. You also see them on laundries too, that they are recessed inside the wall so that you don't have the plug coming out. So that looks awkward there. that they have that plug there.
For sure. Anybody else? Anything else?
Yeah, I have another thing. And I was gonna mention that right when you were talking about the diagrams, the type of kitchens, you had like these little red lines showing like the triangle rule for the kitchens. So the one in the right has like a really good function. Like you have the fridge on the left, then you have the sink on the middle, and then you have the stove where you cook. So that's like a good line of preparation. Like you coming from the storage, then cleaning, and then prep, and then cook and serve. So the one in the left has the stove in the middle. I know the window is to the right, but it's just something that we should have in mind when we design, because we as designer and not interior designers, we don't go that deep like you do. But if we do have this information and how a kitchen should work, having the storage and sink, then cooking in like a sequential way, uh, it's more functional. So the one in the right, it's way more functional. The layout. If you have like the stove to the left, with the kitchen in the left, then you have to go all the way to the sink and go back to the stove to cook. So I just wanted to point that out because it's always good to have that in mind when we are designing at least the layout, because we don't go that deep. Most of our projects, we don't go that deep in designing, picking materials and stuff. So if we give that at least a good function to the kitchen overall, um, good things could come from that.
That's great. A couple items too that I see is that I don't see backsplashes. So for the sink in both of them, I don't know what that wall is made out of. But I wouldn't use wood as a backsplash, as I see on the right. It looks like wood because that's gonna get wet. It's gonna rot. It's gonna be problematic. So we usually either do about 8 inches of tile, or make tile the entire back of the walls of all the kitchens where you're gonna be cooking, and because things splash around and they get dirty and it's difficult to clean. Often, if you are gonna just do gypsum wall board, they use a different paint. That will be, and also the gypsum wall board will have to be moisture resistant so that you can just wipe it off. So it's important to know the difference between a glossy finish, a matte finish. Because if you do glossy, you can just wipe it off, clean it. If it's absorb, so it will be, that beautiful chicken that you're making splash blood all over the wall, and there you go, stained forever. You can't really clean it, so that's important to keep in mind.
So I just want to make sure if anybody else has something to say, because Nicole and I wanted to point the things that were not mentioned, just to make sure we kind of like break this.
No, go ahead, take it
Sure.
away.
So, one, they had a good point. Yes. So that one, the triangle works. We were not pointing that out, but it's good that he mentioned that that does work in comparison to picture number one. So good catch. So yes, the proximity of the fridge, the sink, and the stove is definitely important. And if you have it far, I think it's important to provide additional prepping for that. Like in some cases where I have the stove farther, I still had 2 counters to prep, and it was because the kitchen was actually a bigger kitchen, like a high-end kitchen. So other than that, one of the issues here, there's a lot of issues aesthetically too. For example, if a kitchen is really that small, I wouldn't do this mini little island thing. I will have the client to have the option to buy those little island that you can buy. It's kind of like a little car, but it's up to them. I wouldn't do just this little mini thing here that I know is for prepping, but to me it looks a little bit awkward. But that's subjective. That's more aesthetically. But major issues, some of you mentioned, is the clearance. Yes, above the sink. That is very low. Also, that space above the cabinet, guys, if we have enough height, I will suggest just covering that all the way up to the ceiling with trim, because that is just a perfect scenario to collect grease and dust. So I wouldn't like leave it open like that. If I have a space, I will do another set of cabinets, which in this case, this is very low to do that. But if you cannot do other set of cabinets above that, like the lower cabinets, close it up with trim. Whether they do it or not, at least we're showing that we're not creating that weird scenario to just collect dust. That's number one with that. And then, yes, the fridge is very close to the wall. So now we need to have at least 5 inches or so from the wall in order to open, to have the proper clearance for the fridge to open, at least 90 degrees. Another major thing, when we do cabinets above the fridge, those are mainly custom. However, I think when we do cabinets really far back, it's pointless because it's really hard to reach them. So if we will do cabinets like that above the fridge, just make it go all the way to almost be flush with the fridge. I know a lot of people do it that it doesn't flush, but they're not really that accessible. So if we're gonna do it, I think it would be a more practical way to make them flush with the fridge. So that was a major issue I saw on that one. On the number one of the major issues, besides what Darwin mentioned, is there's no symmetry on the main wall. I don't see why they couldn't just align the stove. Did you guys see that? In the wall where the stove is, it's not aligned. So that's symmetrical. Not exactly, it can work, I know that. But one of the other thing is that that's a dead space in the corner. So you cannot open that cabinet. Some of you guys mentioned that, but that's extremely non-functional. But mainly the materials there will not work well for a kitchen because everything is super white. So this is going to get super dirty. So that was something major. I know we're not really, if we're not doing interior design, we wouldn't get into this. But if we are, then that's something we wouldn't recommend. Like white on white on white on white. So that's that. And then I don't think anybody else has any comments. Or do we go through everything? Nicole?
Yeah, I think we can jump to the
next.
next slide.
Sounds good. This. Nicole, that's you.
Yeah, no, I just want to see what people, like you guys, what do you think when you see this picture?
Oh, this doesn't meet any of the clearances of a bathroom. For sure. The door opens right into the sink. The sink is tiny. This could be any other country, not the United States.
I was going
Because
to say
I've
this look
seen
like
some things like
Europe,
this. Or the Dominican,
like an
or yeah.
European bathroom.
Is that a
Mhm.
plain bathroom or?
Yeah. So you need 15 inches of either side of the toilet. I don't think you have that. You need to have, I would say, ideally at least 2'6" or 3 feet around everything so that you can walk on. The tubs are tricky because they are allowed to be whatever they are. But if it was a shower, it needs to be at least 30 to 32 in width, and the depth could be any size, I guess. But it's awkward. All of these dimensions are very awkward.
The door is just for me to pass. The door is, I don't know, it's like 20 inches.
The sink is too it's not high enough.
Okay, anybody else? I think that pretty much covers that. Okay. That's it for this part of the training. You guys can go back for this if you feel this is a good resource for you. Again, we consider this part 1 because there's always so much more information to learn about. We just want to know if you guys have any thoughts, question, comments, if you guys want us to go back to something and explain more or whatever you would like us to do.
So far, so good. Continue. Is anybody recording this?
We started recording. It said you were the host, that you had to do that yourself.
Oh, so we
No,
didn't record.
but it is recording. This meeting is being recorded, yes.
It's recording in your computer now.
Oh, great. Thank you, guys.
So yes, that's it for today, guys. We want to know if you have any thoughts, comment, or questions.
I would say this is a great training. I liked it. I didn't see all of it. Sorry, guys, but at least the interactive part was great. Doing more interactive parts will be awesome because it does, it's lunchtime. People start getting hungry and hangry, but having interactive things like that, very methodical. So I'm gonna borrow that idea from you guys. Let's make sure this resource is in our Google Slides and we can share with everybody. People can go back to it. Now that you guys put this together, Ryan and Nicole, you guys are also becoming a bit of Darwin. So when people have questions, you say, go to that recording. When people have silly little straightforward questions, we did a training on that, go to that recording so that you can be more methodical of the use of your time and your energy, and they can go back to that. And then you can have a great conversation. You're going to feel very satisfied knowing that people watched your video, looked at this, and they can at least get a good raw design that works, and then you can get into the sweet spot of things. So that's great.
Thank you, Darren. And Juliana has a quick question.
I do have, just keeping that slide. You see that you mentioned that we should put like a soft on top of the cabinets on the kitchen? Sometimes it's very high, right? Because this is like they have like, I don't see they make like soft in everywhere.
Sometimes it can be a soffit, but sometimes it can be trim. Like if you're just 8 inches, 9 inches to get to the wall, there's a way to do like a nice trim in different way. I think what Darwin said was a soffit, so that's different. What I was saying is trim. Like if you're really close to getting to the ceiling, like in that case of the bad example kitchen, like a trim, which is just kind of like the stylish trim that they do to kind of finish it up to the top.
So when it's like short, just close it, but when it's like very high,
So
just
if
do
it's
a
very,
soft or don't do anything.
let me see, let me find a better example. If you have a bigger high, like this example of this kitchen, you see how I did a double. So the cabinets there, I did 36 inches, which means I made the cabinet taller and then I add another set of cabinets. So I'm giving the client more storage because I have a much higher room. So I'm trying to kind of like proportion it. If you look at this space, the kitchen on the left, if I made the cabinets just 24 inches high, if I didn't make any upper cabinets, it wouldn't look as proportionate, I think, because the room is super high over there with the vaulted ceilings. So play with that depending on your height. Yes, there are occasions where you can do a soffit, but Darwin can quote me on that. Sometimes that can be more expensive. So it depends on the design. If you can make it happen, I would suggest another set of cabinets if the client has the budget, of course, or if you have a storage problem, or just finish it up with trim. Again, don't do 2 feet of trim or a foot because that might look weird. So I'm just saying if you have a little bit of a space, yes. Sorry, I hope that answered your question.
I will call this part 1 of a 3-part series. So you guys know this is part 1 in any other future videos, because on the part 2, I'm going to engage Rai and Nicole with our cabinet manufacturers. And we're going to have a session where they're going to come to the office and tell us how they make them and how they grabbed our designs and make them into shop drawings to then build them. And then part 3, I would like us to go to a site where a kitchen is being installed before it gets installed or when it's getting installed. So you guys see how it's gotten put together. So you can get a good sense of everything. And that will really empower all of you, I would say. So part 3, likely we'll see if there's a kitchen being done in Salem or PBD nearby, the same day that they're going to be installing it, so that we can at least see the cabinets being installed, maybe not the stone, but the cabinets being installed. This was general and this was very good. It was a great start on the kitchen side, but seeing it, understanding the thicknesses of the materials, how they're put together, soft close versus not soft close, the different hinges, the different systems, that's going to really empower you to get more elaborate with the design and a little bit more detailed. And there is do's and don'ts that we don't know, that the cabinet manufacturers will tell us, like, oh, don't do that. Don't ever do this. Don't ever do that, because they know better how this thing works, because they get the complaints after it's installed. We don't hear it. We hear that it's fixed. We don't know how they fixed it.
Definitely. Thank you, Darwin. Yes, we call it part 1 because we didn't want to make it super long and we know there's a lot of information. So just keep in mind some of the things we didn't discuss that if Darwin will like us to do this again, we have room to talk about in another part, ADA, so which is when it needs to be accessible. So that's another set of rules. And also commercial kitchens. We didn't talk about that because that's another set of requirements. So we kind of focus more on the residential aspects. So that's also something to keep in mind.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank you so much, guys.
girls.
Good job.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Good job.